Well, good Monday morning. This is going to be a different one, a little bit personal perhaps, and maybe not the message you were looking for the first thing on a Monday morning. So, warnings there, but certainly safe. Safe for you, your children, pets, carpets, and fabrics. And that is this. Many of you know that in the last 5 years, I lost my parents. My dad 5 years ago, my mother, just as you're watching this, it would be about 6 months ago. During that time, I visited them as often as I could, even though there were tensions in the family between my father and I because I'm a lot more grace filled in my religion. He was a lot more pattern filled in his, and we're both going to heaven. He's there, and I'm headed there. So no insult is intended, but there were difficult times, but I went anyway. With my mother, it was totally opposite. She was just bright and sweet and wonderful. But I would make it a point to get there. And I am blessed to have a wife that encouraged me to do that when she lived down in Alabama, 2.5 hours from here. And of course, when she lived just a mile away. And if my mother needed me, my wife never said, "Oh, but you pay more attention to her than." No, there wasn't this because my mother adored my wife, and my wife adored my mother. So there was none of that. Thank God. I've been blessed. My wife's parents are still with us. They are aging, as is everybody on the planet, frankly, if you haven't noticed. So I decided to put her on a 3-month schedule. I said, just seeing your parents once or twice a year is just not going to do. Even though they live over in the hill country in Texas, beautiful area, I said, we need to get you there every 2 to 3 months. And we'll find the fares on Southwest. We'll find a way to do it. Driving is a bit difficult for my wife, and I can't get over there because of my welcome home tours and work with our safe harbor. So why would we do this? Well, the Bible teaches us in Ecclesiastes, if nowhere else. And if you don't want to read all of Ecclesiastes right now, and who could blame you? It can be a bit of a downer if you don't really work your way through it properly. But Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 7 would be probably sufficient for now. But we also know all sorts of soliloquies. For example, in Shakespeare with Hamlet, when he says to be or not to be, that is a question whether it's nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing in them to die, to sleep, to sleep. That there's the rub. And it goes on to dream, rather. There's the rub. It goes on about, life is passing. Life is quick. So what should we do? Well, first of all, what you ought to first think about your life is how incredibly precious every single day is, to live within that day and to enjoy that day. This is the day the Lord hath made. And so instead of being all worried about the future, which is what media wants you to be, and instead of being all outraged about the past, what is going on today? Whether it's rain or snow or sunshine or heat. And if you're wondering why I would say snow in May, we have people in the southern hemisphere as well. And in May, it is coming on winter down there. So whatever it is, a drink of water. Have you ever just paid attention to the way it feels going down the esophagus and hitting the stomach? Have you ever just thought about cherishing what's there? And you can, because it's limited. There will be a last time to make that drive, a last time you will see that mountain or that lake, a last time you will hold that hand. Now, if you look at it from the way that the world wants you to look at that, that's very, very depressing. I would submit to you, on the other hand, that it makes it more precious. There's a reason we don't have cake every day. And for my overseas visitors, I know you refer to things that are cake that are not really sweet. I'm talking about American cake with lots of frosting on it and tons of sugar in it. We have that for special occasions, whether it's holidays, birthdays, or the like. If you have it every day, you've got serious health issues, but you also haven't learned how to enjoy the things around you without having to have the big mega thing all the time. We should realize that this can be our last day. And instead of depressing us, that should make us more awake, more aware, more interested in seeing what's there. This morning, as I was working, I do a ton of reading so I can do these things and the sermons and the midweek Bible classes. And thank you all for your kind comments, and those who contribute, thank you very much. Outside the window was a squirrel. Now, I've seen squirrels before. I'm an old man. I've seen probably a lot of squirrels in my life. But I'm not going to not look at this squirrel, because squirrels are, sure, they're rats with better PR, but they're fascinating to watch, whether you love them or hate them. This morning, as I was getting into my car, birds were going insane outside. Now, whether it's because we've had very changeable weather or what's going on, I don't know. But I even have a little app on my phone that identifies the sound, which bird is doing what. And in our yard, in our area, there is a territorial war between robins and cardinals. The robins are winning, and the robins are incredibly mouthy right now. And I stood for a good, probably 45 seconds to a minute, just listening to the arguing birds and enjoying it. Actually, I laughed out loud. Why? Because I didn't just walk and get in the car. When I heard something, I stopped and observed it. I looked at it. Whenever people ask me how I notice what I do when I read the Bible, what is there and what is not, the cheap and unkind answer would be, how do you not? It's cheap and it's unkind for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons people don't see is because they have preconceived ideas, or I'm reading a chapter. And so they read the chapter. And it's broken off into verses, so it's even more segmented. Or they've heard sermons about this, they've gone to Vacation Bible School or the like, and they have all of these ideas about the story before they read it. And therefore, everything is being filtered. Every word either goes to what you already believe, or it goes into a memory hole, because it's just not that important. Instead of retrieving it all and having a good hard look at it, we don't think about what it might really mean. Let me give you an example. And we'll do more of this, by the way. Let me give you an example. I've always loved the story of the men that brought their friend who could not walk. They carried him on his bed, cot, whatever it was, and took apart the roof and lowered it before Jesus. Now, I've seen clips from The Chosen and the like, and no disrespect to them. I think they do an incredible job with what they do. But they do the standard thing, and that is, our friend has fallen. Our friend has. Are you aware the scripture doesn't say they're friends at all? In fact, if you know first century Roman society, which would include Judea, it was awash in slaves. The enslaved were everywhere. Even middle-class people had slaves in the house, around the house. When you went to work with enslaved people. Now, it wasn't the kind of slavery we think of when we think of the American South, but it was slavery nonetheless. Slaves wrote. Slaves read. Slaves did all of that work. But when you have 4 people, or however many people, carrying someone on a bed, and your first thought is friends, you don't know the first century. And so you miss something there. They climb up and they lower this person, and not an enslaved person, let's say. The only people going to be carrying beds around and lowering beds are slaves. Those are the only people that would be doing this. And as they lower it, when Jesus sees the faith of those that lowered, you see something? Historians and theologians have long said this, but it amazes me that it's not made it into our churches. Christianity was the religion of women and slaves for the first 100 years at least. It was the religion for women and slaves because Jesus saw them and he responded to them and he offered them something. Jesus doesn't look at the fella. He looks at the ones who lowered and sees their faith and heals the fellow and forgives the fellow's sins, which he does first, the sins bit, which if you don't watch out, you don't notice that. Why would he see these people's faith and then save this guy from his sins? And then you notice what he says next? You pick up your bed. You carry it. Now, could that just been an innocent thing to get him out of a church fight, which I've used that illustration many times? Absolutely. But being awash in the enslaved, it could also have been very much Jesus saying to him, things are different now. I'm forgiving you of your sins, but from now on, you carry your own bed. Now, how do I see that? Because today might be my last time to read that story. I might never have a chance to think about that story again. So I'm going to think about it. Whenever my wife and I sit down to watch telly, I'll look over and look at her several times. Why? This might be my last time to look at her, and she's beautiful and she's wonderful, and she has lived with me all of these years and seen me go through all of these changes, and she's supported me and loved me regardless, even when I've made terrible errors in my judgment or ignorance or whatever. She has stayed there. So I want to see her knowing that there will be a last time. Why do I go off to Oklahoma City or Nashville, Arkansas? And yeah, there's a real Nashville, Arkansas, and I love going there. Or why am I going this summer into Africa and the like? Because there'll be a last time I can see these people. And therefore, every single time is incredibly precious. And they're real people, and they live in a context, and they have things going on. Every Sunday to me is a celebration, even though our soundstage house church is very small. It's almost always in the 20s. That's all that's there, and about half of them are at work to make sure it gets out to you. But I love doing that work because I feel a real community with you. That might be the last time I get to talk to you. So I bring that with me, and I hope you see that. But I want you to do that too. I want you to carpe diem, as we all learned from Robin Williams way back in the Dead Poets Society movie. I want you to see and hear and taste and see that the Lord is good. Come taste and see that the Lord is good. I think of kids in the back seat, not the "are we there yet" kids, but the kids that have to point out every single cow. Every single cow. It didn't take long for me as a dad to go from feeling rather annoyed and pestered by that to actually being a jealous dad. Jealous because why am I not so excited to see every single cow? Why am I not so excited to see every single critter and tree? Great-grandparents and such knew the names of all the trees and bushes. We don't, because we drive by them at fast speeds. We don't walk and have all that time in the company of that bush or tree. But it's also because to us trees aren't important. There are things that we pass on the way to get to other things. We will drive through the Smoky Mountains to get to the Alleghenies. And I'll go, okay, that makes sense. If you've not seen the Alleghenies, you want to see them. But please notice the Smokies as you go through. Used to, and in fact still do, whenever I drive out to Colorado, which is Cammie's home, generally we'll fly her out because the drive's too hard on her, and I'll take the gear and such that we're going to need. And driving across Kansas can be different. It's a very long state, and there's not a lot in it. After, there are some towns that are great towns, but it's an emptiness. It took me probably, to my shame, a dozen or more times before I started seeing the beauty in it. And now I look forward to driving through it. I see the beauty in it. Every time that I go down to see someone on death row, I know it might be my last time. Therefore, I treat it as if this might be my last time, not with weeping and what am I going to do? but instead looking at the person, hearing the person, understanding the person, rejoicing that God made this person and that God has found them, even in this dark and different place. We avoid death. We don't want to talk about it. We hide our age, and up to a point, we hide our age through life until we get to a point where we're proud of it. I'm 93. All of a sudden you go from I'm 39 to I'm 93. We don't buy the insurance that we should because we're afraid to think about death. And when someone goes into the hospital, we avoid visiting because they creep me out. Funerals are avoided. You ought to go. This might be your last time to see not the person in the casket, but the people left behind. You might go, they might go. Leave them with this memory. Touch them. Be there. Be aware and be present in the day. There's more to talk about on this. We'll talk about more of it. But we're out of time this Monday morning. May God bless you. May he keep you and make his face to shine upon you. And as always, may God richly bless you with grace and peace and abundance. Cheers.